Aujourd'hui, c'est un plaisir énorme que nous avons parce que nous avons en face de nous quelqu'un qui a bercé d'une certaine manière nos années 80. Et c'est vrai que c'est quelqu'un de marquant. Impossible de penser à la deuxième partie des années 80 sans évoquer Rick Astley. Thanks for being with us today, Rick.
My pleasure. Mon plaisir.
It's a pleasure to have you back with this album, 50. You just turned 50 in January.
Yeah, I did. February, actually. Yeah,
February.
Yeah, no, it's a big one, 50, but I'm celebrating it rather than hiding it. Yeah, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think? What kind of regard do you listen? Do you put on the past 30 years, 25 years?
That's a lot of years. I think, you know what, I've had a good life. I've had a really good life. And obviously a lot of that is down to the fact that I had my hits in the 80s. And they've kind of set me free, you know, because without being crass, because it's not nice to talk about money sometimes, I made a lot of money in the 80s. So it meant that, you know, I could pick and choose the things I really wanted to do in life. And I had a short pop career, really, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But I've had a fantastic time since then, you know what I mean? And I've been able to spend a lot of time with my family, with our daughter. She's now 24, you know. She doesn't even live at home anymore, but obviously. Yeah, so I've had a really, really lucky life, I think, yeah.
Something that you have to tell me, because every time I think of you, I say, this guy is not Rick Astley. This guy is Dorian Gray. You look
okay.
You look almost exactly the same as you did in
come on, man! I
87.
don't look exactly the same. I mean, if I looked exactly the same, that would be scary. But
no,
thank you. I'll take any compliment you want to throw my way. That's fine.
Now, is it true? Because we listen to a lot of stories surrounding you, and maybe some of them are legends. Let's check them out.
Okay.
For instance, is it true that maybe you refused to do some abroad promoting of your career because you were afraid of the planes?
Basically, I stopped around the time that I actually retired. I developed a fear of flying, and I was on a plane a couple of days ago. You know, I went to Stockholm and then Berlin and home. So, and obviously when I do gigs in South America or Australia, I don't drive there. But I do like to drive. I'm in the car for this promotion right now, and to be honest, later on I'm gonna be in the car driving, and I don't mind driving anywhere in Europe. So. I quite enjoy it, to be honest. It's like one of the very few places left in life where you can be on your own. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You can actually turn the phone off and just say,
it's
right, for the next
space.
few hours, I'm on my own. You know, put the radio on, listen to some music and just chill out. So, but yeah, I do fly now and I'm okay with it. But I think when you're doing something like this, promoting a record and stuff, you can find yourself on a plane almost every day. And I just don't think it's very human. It's just not it used to be, I mean, the long flights are great because that's a bit more, you know, you can chill out. And I'm really lucky. I get to fly at the front end. But I mean, it's kind of, you know, I just think flying these days is a different thing. It's not even the flying, it's getting on the thing. Do you know what I mean? It just takes forever these days, doesn't
absolutely.
it? So, yeah.
So another legend that surrounds you, it's the legend of Muddy Waters. I recall that back in the 80s, at the beginning of your career, some journalists wrote an article that just impacted me forever, saying that your story was almost like what happened to Muddy Waters. Muddy Waters was just cleaning the office on a record company.
Okay. I wonder where you were going with that then. Muddy Waters, what have I got to do with Muddy Waters? No, basically it was a nice story, but I was a T-boy, but I was actually signed to obviously make a record. I was signed to Pete Waterman's company. That's the Stock Aitken Waterman guys.
But then you became a tape operator.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just become a junior and you just do anything, don't you? You know, you make the tea, you get the sandwiches, you do whatever needs doing. Basically, what happened was they became really big producers in that short couple of months after I'd signed a deal. So big record labels were throwing lots of money at them to make records for lots of their artists. And they didn't want to say no, obviously. So myself and maybe a couple of other people who'd signed to their production company, we kind of went to the back of the line. And but in a way, it turned out great because I got to do a lot of my demos, you know, at their studios. So, for instance, a guy who might be engineering a #1 record one week, and at the weekend would be engineering my demos. And it was amazing, you know, and I got to work.
Which later became #1 also.
I had a couple of hits later on, yeah. But also it was that thing that, you know, at the time, technology was really going into a totally different phase in terms of recording. And, you know, us young kids who were in that building, being tape-ops and T-boys and T-girls, we actually got to use that equipment. You know, we were allowed to use the studios through the night and at weekends. So it was a pretty amazing place, to be honest, and again, they were making so many hit records. It felt really good to be in a building where, and I didn't like every one of their records, if I'm honest, but it really felt good to be in a place where, records they were working on were going to be hits, you know what I mean? Because there's been thousands of studios churning out music that don't have hits, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it was good.
Nous avons avec nous la chance d'avoir Rick Astley, évidemment ambassadeur des années 80 pour ce Happy Friday exceptionnel consacré aux 80s. We're just celebrating a Happy Friday entirely dedicated to the 80s.
Yep.
And let's check just one last question about those legends.
Yeah.
The last one was a pretty good one with Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
That's a good compare.
Okay, yeah.
I think.
I'll take that, yeah.
And this one is the story of your demo handed to some RCA responsible. True that you made an audition in a very special place, in a lobby.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely true. True, yeah, completely, yeah. It was really weird. That's the reason, to be honest, that I ended up having some of my songs on that first album, because Pete Waterman wanted to sign me to a major label. So he approached RCA, and they said, well, we want to hear some tracks. And they hadn't recorded anything yet. So I went home on the train, because I'm from the north of England, near Manchester. And I went to this little demo studio of a friend of mine's dad's. And we basically took the vocals off the 4-track demos so that I could sing on top of them. And I took a cassette back, because we worked on cassette in those days, folks. and yeah, we just had this like crappy little speaker, a microphone with no reverb, and there's 4 guys in the reception, one of which was the head of A&R from RCA, and Pete Waterman, a couple of other people. And yeah, I just sang my demos. And when the guy from RCA, Peter's name was, when he said, well, who wrote the songs? Pete Waterman. Just like that, just said, oh, he's a fantastic songwriter as well. Because he knew that obviously this guy's mind was ticking and thinking, well, I quite like these songs. So, and they had no intention of anybody writing, really. That wasn't what they were about. So yeah. I was really lucky that happened. And then later on, I actually got a couple of singles as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
But in the beginning, he didn't want to believe that the voice he heard on the demos was yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what it was...
Because of the powerful voice
I think I'd recorded one thing, but Pete didn't really think it was right, so he might have played him something, but he just wanted to hear me sing some different stuff, so that's how I, ended up going doing, getting my old demos and all the rest of it, and yeah, it was a very lucky accident, I think that, yeah.
Let's go back to the album. Retournons à l'album Rick Astley 50. C'est un album imprégné, marqué dans quasiment chacun de ses titres. En tout cas, 80% de l'album est marqué par le gospel. C'est un album exceptionnel. Franchement, je le dis pas parce qu'il est là, Rick Astley, mais parce que vraiment, on l'a écouté et on prend un plaisir fou à écouter. Un album super puissant. This album is really remarkably marked by gospel. There's a lot of gospel inspiration in a lot of tracks. In Keep Singing, I Like the Sun, Somebody Loves Me, Let It Rain. Also in Pray With Me. Would you say that the gospel music, and by extension blues and soul, are some kind of music that made you feel better in life?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always responded to great singers, and I think one of the fantastic things about gospel music is that it focuses on the people singing, and it focuses on the words that they're singing as well. I'm not actually religious. I don't really have a God. My faith is in human beings, not on some other kind of being. I think that gospel music, also in terms of a lot of the I guess certain artists that I've liked, like somebody like Bill Withers, for instance. Oh, yeah. Al Green, who is the Reverend Al Green, but I'd say even more Bill Withers, to be honest. A lot of the style in the way that he puts his things together and puts his tracks together, it sort of reminds me of that kind of gospel feel a little bit. It's just very earthy, and yeah, I think I've always just responded to that kind of music, really. And I still love. I mean, as a kid, I was in choirs and stuff at church and at school, and I've just always loved that whole thing about singing with other people, and just because it's the most natural way to make music. There's nothing to translate. There's no keyboard, there's no guitar, there's no nothing. It's literally what the sound that the human body makes. That's it,
But you have to be a hell of a singer to to approach this
yeah, but
jam?
well, yeah, to be honest, I also think I like it when people sing who aren't great singers. I don't mean on records. I'd much rather hear great singers on records.
Just the heart and soul, that's all that matters.
I'm just saying, when people are singing, whether it's at the football or it's at a concert or whatever it is, there's just something that's quite, there's a joy in it, I think. And, we've probably done it for hundreds of thousands of years. Do you know what I mean? However long man has been on the planet, we've probably been doing it. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
You've been pretty amazed. You just told me before this interview begins by the approach of the media for this album. There's such an overwhelming feeling for this album. I think what happens sometimes is that you get lucky and the song Never Gonna Give You Up has had like a rebirth in a way on the internet with various things. So I think I've been quite lucky with that in the sense that it's kind of reminded people about me a little bit over the last few years. So I know some artists might look at that negatively, that their song gets chosen to be used for this, that and the other, you know what I mean? But I never did. I just thought, well, great, you know what I mean? Bring it on, you know what I mean? If this means that kids of a certain age or younger people have actually heard that song, then great, you know what I mean? So, so therefore, I think, perhaps I've been pushed into people's minds a little bit over the last few years, so that's been really good. So, yeah. Une chose que l'on remarque sur cet album et que vous allez remarquer, parce que franchement, nous vous encourageons, toute l'équipe ici, on a tous flashé sur cet album à l'écouter. We encourage people to listen to this album, frankly, because we've said, people have said a lot of things about singers in the 80s that couldn't sing, that had no voices, that it was all overdub and working in the studios. On a dit beaucoup de choses sur les chanteurs des années 80 qui n'étaient pas des vrais chanteurs, c'était du travail de studio, etc., du chiquet. But you're a hell of a singer.
Thank you.
From the beginning.
Thank you.
And here we can notice it because, like I said, comme je le disais, pour chanter des chansons aussi nues, to sing such naked songs that sometimes,
right,
if you don't have the voice, if you don't have the soul of it, you just go to the wall.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I also think, again, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about making this record is that I've kind of stripped it down a little bit. There is production, obviously. I produced the record and I played everything on it, and I've really enjoyed doing that and everything. But I've tried, on certain songs especially, to really pull it back, like you say, because I guess for a number of reasons. One being that if anyone mentions me or I'm brought up in conversation, people tend to pick up on my voice. Obviously, they pick up I'm Never Gonna Give You Up, but they also pick up on my voice. And it always seemed crazy to me with certain producers and what have you that they kind of bury someone's voice in a track sometimes, and they really get over interested in what the track's doing. And that's great for certain kinds of music, of course it is. But for me, even with a lot of dance tunes, all right, the track's massively important, but it only really comes to life for me when the person sings the chorus bit. Even if it's just one line over and over again, that's still the thing that really gets me going. And maybe that's personal to me, but so yeah, I wanted to try and make sure that the production helped me rather than kind of buried me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
This album is pretty important to you for several reasons. Cet album est très important pour Rick Astley à plusieurs niveaux, pour plusieurs raisons. The title is 50. You just turned 50 in February. We're not going to insist on this, even if you got no problem with the age. And just one thing, you said in an interview, these songs have been years in the making. And these songs, they draw a lot of things from your private life.
Yeah.
Was it because of the type of music you've chosen for this album that it was so essential to you to sing important words?
I think it's just a marriage of the two things. I think, like I said before, I think a lot of the time when you listen to gospel music or even gospel that has kind of turned into soul or R&B or, it's a lot of the time the words were really important because there's a message in them. And I think there is a message in quite a lot of the songs on this record. There's a song on there called Angels on My Side, and that's basically about the fact that in my career, but also in my personal life, I've had people look after me, I've had people take care of me. And very often I think, in the music business especially, or any kind of business like that, I'm sure the film world's the same as well, not everyone around you has really got your interests at heart. They're basically there to try and get you to sell records, to make money. And sometimes you need people around you to protect you a little bit. And I remember watching the Amy Winehouse documentary last year and just thinking, it's a shame on every level that you can think of. But But even if you just take her personal life out of it just for 1 second, her story life, you know, a life story rather, just the fact that she was just such a great talent, that's just such a shame in itself. And the fact that nobody around her could perhaps stop what happened, even just to kind of keep her to be able to make more records, that in itself is a shame. But the fact that she's a human being as well and needed protecting and needed looking after. Anyway, there's been certain times, I think, when I've looked at certain people in the business and just thought, wow, I've been really lucky, because I had people around me who thought more about me than money. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, perhaps why I'm relatively sane today. So
let's listen to Angels on My Side, a new single taken from the LP 50. Just you were talking about Amy Winehouse, one of my favorite singers of all time. I guess for everybody, or a lot of people at least. And the documentary was exceptional.
Yeah.
Just would you have enjoyed sharing the mic with Amy, for instance, doing a duet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's loads of people who I really admire vocally. Duets are weird, I think, because on the one hand, I think if you do them and it just happens because you're just both in a bar after a gig, that's one thing. Making a record, doing it like that, I think is, I don't know, it's there's a part of me sometimes, certain favourite singers I've not even wanted to meet, if I'm honest, because I like to keep them where I've got them in my mind. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes...
You're afraid of being deceived? Or?
Well, not even being deceived, but just I think it's quite nice to have somebody there. Do you know what I mean? There's certain... I'm really into football, and, you know, I don't really want to meet some of my football idols because I don't really want to... Well, maybe, yeah, as you say, sometimes be disappointed if you like, but I think more just that it's just nice to feel like a kid and just kind of say, you know, I hold that artist in such a regard that I don't really want to meet them, maybe even, you know.
Just to keep the dream alive or
yeah,
something?
but I think, I think she definitely was one of those singers that sang from deep inside her. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It wasn't like any kind of pretense. It just seemed like she just sang and it just worked. And I think like Adele is like that as well, where I believe them. Do you know what I mean? To be honest, they could even sing the telephone book and I'd still believe them. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got that, they've got that thing about them, the way they sing, you know. So
we say so very often regarding different artists that they can sing whatever the phone book and it's okay.
Yeah.
I got 3 songs to make you listen to. So if you just please put the headphones on, just to. Like I told you, sometimes when I listen, maybe it's just me, but sometimes when I listen to some songs, I hear other singer songs on the same track. Okay. So let's try this once, and you just tell me if you would like to reboot, if it comes your way, this song, for instance.
Okay. Every time we say goodbye, I die a little.
It was on your top 5.
It's not that song, but it's one of his songs.
Holding Back the Years, yeah.
No, I like Mick Hucknall a lot, actually. I mean, for a number of reasons. He's a Manchester United supporter, so. But also, I think because he's had a pretty amazing career, I think, and he's and obviously that's a cover and what have you, but he's written some pretty amazing songs, I think. Yeah, I mean, my favourite of his is Holding Back the Years, I think.
We're going to talk about Holding Back the Years later on, because you just pick up 80 songs.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of amazing things to tell about this special track, Holding Back the Years, that sounds like a cover or a classic.
Right, it does, yeah.
And it's just an original creation. That's amazing. Listening to 50, your album, Rick, quand j'ai écouté l'album de Rick Astley 50, immédiatement, j'ai imaginé un duo entre... I have imagined a duet between you and this young guy.
Oh, won't you stay with me?
It's almost the same kind of family.
Yeah, definitely, because it's traditional songwriting. That song of his could have been written 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
You know,
and could have been written 25 years ago by you. Also,
okay.
It sounds,
I wish so. Yeah.
It sounds like Rick Astley classic track.
I think he's kind of an interesting guy as well in terms of vocally as well, because he's one of those people who he's not very when he sings, it's him. There's not many people who kind of have that tone to their voice, I think. And that, I think that, I'm not saying it's important, but it's nice when somebody just, drops their record and it's like, wow, that doesn't sound like anybody else,
Yeah.
I really like him. I think he's great, Sam.
And then the third song, and this one, I mean,
I called him Sam then, as if I know him, didn't I? Yeah.
Sam
Smith.
Smith.
Yeah.
Sam Smith,
Just
absolutely.
Sam.
Everybody knows
Sam.
about it, Sam. Hey, come on, buddy. Let's have a pal.
Exactly.
And this one
Okay.
also, this song sounds like it could have been sung by you.
Yeah, that's another great song. Yeah, Colin Verncombe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The late Colin Verncombe that left us just a few
Very
months
sad,
ago.
Very sad. Funnily enough, the first time I ever got properly recognised, I'd gone to see Madonna at Wembley Stadium, the football stadium. And this woman came straight over to me, and I'm thinking, what? I'm kind of looking round, and then it's dawning on me, wow, this woman recognises me. I've just been on the telly or whatever, and this woman's gonna. And she came over, and she said, "Oh, I love your record." And I said, "Oh, thank you. That's amazing. That's great." and she said, she basically said to me, "Yeah," he said, "Yeah, I really love your record, and I just think you're great, Colin. I just think you're absolutely fantastic." Because he used to wear a lot of black polo necks as well, and he had the quiff and it kind of same colour
And she
hair.
thought
And
that you were
everything.
Colin.
Yeah. So I just nodded and went, "Yeah, great, thank you, lovely." I thought I'm not going to put her right, I don't want to
Like you
spoil
said,
her moment,
Any compliment that comes your way, you just
Exactly.
take
Any
them.
compliment that comes my way, exactly. Call me Colin if you like.
Donc vous l'avez compris, Madonna l'a
Yeah.
confondu avec Black en le rencontrant backstage à un concert de Wembley. If you had to pick one of these three songs to re-record it, which one would you prefer to do? Sam Smith, Simply Red, or Black?
I'd say Black, to be honest. I mean, having said that, I think someone did do a version of it fairly recently, I think,
Yeah.
last few years, yeah. But I think also it's from my era, like I say. I mean, he had that hit around the time I had my first hit as well, and it's just, I don't know, just one of those great records, I think. But again, when you go back to a record, I do this a lot, to be honest, around 1987 and a few of the years after, where certain records kind of meant more, because I would go to do TV shows and I'd go to do this, that and the other, or radio stuff and what have you, and a lot of these artists would be there, and in a way it's sort of like a little time capsule. It's like a bubble that you're in, and there's certain memories that I have of like waiting to go on stage, listening to that song so many times. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like a band called Living in a Box, I did loads of stuff with them. Johnny Hates Jazz, just loads of people. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of, it's really weird sometimes. I hear those records and I almost get a tingle because I think, oh, I'm up next. Yeah, it's a bit weird, yeah.
And you've been taking part to a lot of concerts with stars from the 80s.
Absolutely,
Do you feel backstage the joy that the public, the audience feels in front of, the stage?
It's different, obviously, because it's a bit like the what do you call that? It's like the third wall or whatever you call it, where we all know each other a little bit. So we see each other in underwear. We see each other in, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And
all sweaty after the gig's finished. All of that kind of thing. I say underwear.
in the less sexy
Underwear's
part.
not very often, but you know what I mean. It's it's a different vibe. But to be honest, I still go and watch a lot of the bands that I'm kind of playing with from the side of the stage. I still love it. I'm still a really big Level 42 fan, and I always go and watch them when they're playing. Partly because I love the songs and everything, but also just from a musician point of view, I just think it's still great.
Mainly Mark King, his bass play is amazing.
Yeah, and they've got an amazing drummer as well, a young guy actually. And I play drums, and I've always played drums since I was a kid, and it's one of the reasons that I really like Level 42, not just because of Mark's playing, but there you go,
Also
Mark
the
again,
drums,
yeah. I do know Mark enough to call him Mark, I think. But no, there's so many bands. ABC, I really enjoy watching their set as well. Go West as well, because a lot of those I bought a lot of those records. Literally bought a lot of those records. So it's kind of, because some of those guys were a couple of years before me. And so it's pretty amazing to be on a stage with them, I think the first time I met Paul Young, again, was way back in the, around the time I had my first hit and what have you. And he's one of the singers that I've admired from the get-go, because, again, he just had an amazing voice, but he had a really distinctive voice. you know, when that guy sings, it's like, boom, that's it, that's him. And there's no one else who sings like him. And I've always loved that about him and various other singers. You know,
I know another one of this type is just in front of me right now. From this time, do you still keep some friends, real friends, issue from the musical scene of this time?
Not really. I mean,
Just colleagues.
I'm friendly, definitely. I see a bit of Rick Drumming, actually, who's from Go West, because we actually live very close to each other. In fact, we moved a couple of years ago, but I'm still fairly close to him. But I literally live like 3 or 4 streets away from him. So, and also friends of friends, kids date each other. You know what I mean? So it all becomes that kind of thing, because we've all got either teenage or kids in our 20s, in their 20s. So that happens a little bit as well. And but I think there's definitely a sense of camaraderie. There's no doubt about that. I think we're all rooting for each other. I think back in the day, there might have been a bit more jealousy. There might have been a bit more competition, because we're all trying to have a hit record, and it's like, well, if theirs is getting more airplay than yours, then it's like, that's trouble. Do you know what I mean? So, but I think now, because it's not really about the records when we do those gigs, it's about the memories, if you know what I mean. It's the memories of those records, in truth. I think we're all, I certainly feel that, and I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that everyone is kind of wishing everybody else to have a good gig. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just the only way to do it, I think. Yeah.
Nous avons le bonheur d'avoir Rick Astley avec nous pour son album 50, et pas seulement, c'est un petit peu le parrain. You're in a way the godfather of this happy Friday dedicated to the 80s. You're the best ambassador we could have here in the studio. You play every instrument on the album. Il joue tous les instruments sur 50. Was it something that was it a will from yourself, or just...
It didn't start out exactly that way. No, I wasn't even starting out actually making a record. I was just kind of writing some songs, and I think I also just chose like a palette of instruments, if you like, or colours, whatever, to say that's the sound I'm going to make. I'm going to use that bass. I'm going to use those 2 or 3 guitars. I'm going to keep it to that piano and maybe, you know, a bit of whatever. And I'm not going to use loads of synthesizers and loads of this. I want to keep it fairly simple. And I kind of just thought, well, I've got a really great band, so I could have got them in to play things, but I just thought, I just want to do it myself this time. I just want to be able to just say, sit back at the end of it. And it's got its limitations because of that, and I'm aware of that. And I mean, I work constantly with 2 much better piano players than I am, but on the one end, it would be a tiny bit less my record.
Yeah,
I'm really glad that it's, you know what I mean? If I lived in a remote part of Scotland, I'd have to do it like that. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I don't know, there was just something really nice about doing it myself. And as I got more and more into it, I just kind of felt, well, no, I'm just going to stick with this. I'm just going to play it, I think. So yeah, but again, that thing about not really starting as a record and just starting just by writing some songs. One of the things that's made me change my mind about wanting to make a record is the fact that doing gigs now, because you post something later, a photograph or a kind of thank you to the crowd, they respond and they let you know what I mean? And they'll say, we love the old ones, but we want a new record, make a new record. And eventually, you think, okay, I'll make one then. So, yeah, it's cool.
You can be very proud of the album, Rick, because also in the instruments, that was the purpose of my question, is that the sound of each instrument, the instrumentation, the global instrumentation looks very organic, as every note matters.
Okay.
So even if you got your limitations on the instruments...
If you would have said that a while ago, I would have put that on the bottom of the album, actually. Every note matters.
Maybe for the next one.
That's a good one, yeah. I like that. Every note matters. Okay.
You've been asked to choose for us 5 songs, your 5 favorite songs of the 80s.
Yeah.
Let's begin with the first one and the reason why.
I've gone for the Human League. And I've gone for Don't You Want Me.
That's a classic one.
There's a number of reasons. I mean, I remember, I'm not sure how old I was exactly when that record came out, but I was a teenager and I was going to what we used to call like an under-18s disco. So there was no alcohol or anything like that, but
Yeah,
and
I've known this kind of disco.
Yeah,
also.
I'm sure. And I remember, I think that's the first time I heard it, I think. And I just thought, I don't even know how they've made that sound, because... I mean, the 80s were pretty amazing, I think, in terms of that's when we first heard synthesizers being the absolute basis of a whole of a record. I know obviously there's been more experimental records, and you can take your pick of bands and artists who've used synthesizers before the 80s, obviously, or before this record. But it's just got an incredible sound to it. And again, Phil Oakey, no one sings like Phil Oakey.
No,
and then when I actually saw them on Top of the Pops and then saw the video, it's just like all over. It's just all over. It's just a classic. It's a monster.
Let's hear it in full. Écoutons en entier évidemment ce classique, et c'est vrai, Eric a raison, le son du synthé sur Human League, c'est pas le synthé pourrave des années 80 comme certains pourraient le décrire, mais il est intemporel et il est d'une fraîcheur absolue. Don't You Want Me? The second track, la deuxième titre des années 80 qui t'a marqué, c'est lequel? Which
Okay,
one?
the second one, I'm going synthesizers again here, big time. Depeche Mode.
Ah yeah.
And I'm going to go for Just Can't Get Enough. I remember being on like a school trip, and we were probably 15, something like that, and there were some really hot girls from another school at this place that we were at. It was like an outdoor outdoor adventure sort of thing. And I remember thinking these girls were really hot from this other school, and just thinking, wow, And then Top of the Pops was on, the big BBC show that we always used to have. And these guys came on, and I think two of them didn't have shirts on. And these girls went completely and utterly nuts. And I just sort of thought, I have to investigate this band. I have to find out more about Depeche Mode. And it's just one of those records, again, where you hear it and it just brings back so many memories. And it was like a brave new world. It was just like, we can make records with synths and a drum machine and nothing else. We don't need guitars, we don't need basses, we don't even need drums. And it's just like, okay, fine, okay, let's just jump on that bus and let's go. And it just totally different sounding records, I think. And there was a bit of naivety, I think, to the sound of this record in terms of, and even a naivety in Dave Gahan, the way he sang it and everything. But just a great pop record. And they've gone on to make so many fantastic records, I think, and explore that whole thing, to its, furthest degree possible. But I just love this record, it's great.
Ça, c'était le deuxième titre de la troisième chanson des années 80 qui a marqué Rick Astley. The third song that impacted you in the 80s is...
I'm going to go for David Bowie.
Oh.
And I'm going to go for Let's Dance.
Ah, yeah.
Because I think, obviously, he's famous for it. He kind of reinvented himself almost every record. And I just didn't imagine that anybody could reinvent themselves or at least invent a persona, if you like, to that degree. Because...
and so many times.
Yeah. But I mean, with this record, Nile Rodgers produced it, I think. And it took in so many elements, I guess, of sort of disco. Well, disco is perhaps not the right word, but dance and what have you.
Yeah.
Let's dance. But he did it in such a way that was so kind of still him. And again, talking about videos, which became so massively important in the 80s, watching the video for that song as well, it was just incredible. It was like a real journey and everything. Just monster, I think. I mean, I've liked lots of different Bowie records, but I think around the time that I was really getting into, trying to be in bands and play and what have you, this record just came out and just blew us all away, because it was David Bowie, but not the David Bowie we knew. It was just like this totally new artist, and it was just incredible.
And it was the first record that I bought when
Really?
I was a teenager.
Wow.
Yes, the first one was this one, together the same day with The Power and the Glory from Jimmy Cliff.
Wow. Okay,
Those
wow,
were the
that's
two-
a mix.
the first-
That is a mix.
And the fourth song that you listen to, that you pick up from the 80s.
Yeah,
Quatrième chanson.
I'm going to go with Simply Red, and it's a fairly obvious choice, to be honest, if you're going to talk about Simply Red. Holding Back the Years. I think it's possibly the best song he's ever written, but that's my opinion, obviously. But
it's a wonderful song.
it is. It's a great song.
And from the beginning, everybody thought it was something from
Exactly,
Ella Fitzgerald. Or
Yeah, because he'd done a couple of covers, I think, and obviously he seems to be quite a big fan of a certain genre and a certain style, with in terms of soul and what have you. And this could have been written by any of the greats, I think, and sung by any of the greats. It just fitted into that thing of just thinking, exactly like you say, like you think, I already know this song. And that is I don't know. That's a real. If you can do that, that's like a true art. I think, to be able to make people think they've already heard it. You know. But just a great record, I think, and it just never. Every time I hear it, I don't sort of think to myself, I've heard that too many times. It's still got it, I think. Do you know what I mean? Even after all these years, you know what I mean? So yeah, it still stands up today properly, I think.
It's just like Hotel California, for instance. Each time that you go to the final with the guitar battle, you have to listen it.
Yeah,
in
you
full.
do. Yeah. It is funny, isn't it? Our music. You'd think you kind of get bored of it after.
Never.
Yeah, but
you never get bored of good music.
Well, I think that's very, very true. Yeah.
And the last one, le dernier titre des années 80 qui a marqué Rick Astley, notre invité d'honneur, c'est...
Yeah, the last one is a song called Don't Dream It's Over by Crowded House.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's probably the band that I've seen most live in my life. I've been to see them so many times. This has got kind of sentimental value as well, because this ring is my engagement ring. I've just taken the ring off my finger. And it's got some of the lyrics in there. And it's mine and my wife's song. And if it comes on the radio, not when I'm driving, but if it comes on the radio, I call her and play it to her over the phone.
That's wonderful.
So that's our song, if you like. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure that I really understand the lyrics, because one of the gigs that I was at, one of the band members literally just stopped playing. It was the drummer, and he's not in the band anymore because he passed away. But he literally stopped drumming. He kind of threw his sticks down to the snare drum and said, Neil, what the bloody hell am I singing? I've been singing backgrounds to all these different songs for years. Explain what this song actually means, because I haven't got a clue. And he said, and I'm sure all those thousands of people out there don't know either.
Absolutely.
And it was just, but I think that's one of the great things about Neil Finn, is that he writes incredible songs, obviously. And I think you can interpret them the way you want to.
Absolutely.
I mean, sometimes, obviously, they're there, you know, you can just read it and see it and sing it. But there's certain things that he says in a song sometimes that you just think, well, what does that actually mean? But it just sounds amazing, you know what I mean? And then you can go off in your own little trip, in your own little world, and invent what you think it means, you know.
Do you think that's also a power of the pop music that allows people to enjoy some liberty of interpretation, just like if they're listening to classical music, and if they want to think that the winter of Vivaldi is the summer for them, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes obviously the lyrics just pin down and that's it, you know. But yeah, I think that is one of the great things about you know, this kind of era of music that we've been in for the last 50, 60 years, whatever it is, 70 years now, rock and roll. I don't know how old it is, to be honest, but it does reinvent itself every now and again, and people still come up with new things to say, which is pretty amazing after all these years. You kind of think, look, surely all the words, all the chords, all the words they've all been mapped out in one song or another. You can't still keep reinventing it. But people do, you know. People still find a different way to say I love you, unbelievably, you know. Or I'm sad that you don't love me. Do you know what I mean? They still managed to do that. So it's pretty amazing, that, I think, yeah.
If I tell you that in the album Pray With Me, I don't like to compare people with other people, but sometimes it's inevitable.
Yep.
You listen to a song and you say, okay, it sounds a little bit like...
Sure, that's okay.
If I tell you You and Cry, do you remember this duet?
Yeah, of course I remember. Yeah. Fantastic records. Yeah.
Pray With Me made me think of these ones.
No, listen, I regard that as a compliment rather than any kind of disservice. Yeah. No, again, same thing. That first single of theirs was out probably maybe the summer before mine, or you know, it was in that same sort of 12-month gap or what have you, or you know. And I loved their first record for sure.
Labor of Love, it was.
Yeah. And they made some great albums, but I mean, that first particular single I just think was just really great. Yeah, there's a few. They had a song called Looking for Linda, which I always loved as well, to be honest. I just thought it was a really great lyric and what have you, and an amazing voice, really good voice. Yeah.
One thing that's really amazing about you also is that beside your musicality and your
is
voice,
my hair,
and also it's perfect. Looks perfect. Looks just like 25 years ago. It's amazing. Is the fact that, despite the fact that thanks to the fact that you're also a singer, you're also a fan of a lot of people. I mean, you never hesitate to say, I love this record, I love this artist.
No, yeah,
I go
am.
to the
Absolutely,
gigs.
I am. Yeah, I definitely am.
Those days we don't see that very often in artists.
Really? Do you not think?
Sometimes they just keep everything for themselves.
No, and I think to be honest, I'm probably of an age that I shouldn't perhaps be listening to certain kinds of music because, you know, maybe I'm just too old for it. But then again, I don't really have that view to a great degree. I just kind of think music it's there to be enjoyed, and whether it's something that's brand new, and like I say, I'm not going to go clubbing anymore. Do you know what I mean? But I do like a lot of dance records still. And fair enough, I only probably hear the kind of commercial end of dance music these days, but I just love a lot of new records that are, you know, that are coming through. And there's, again, some of the vocalists we've spoken about today, Sam Smith, I mentioned Adele before and what have you. I don't think there's anybody ever been better than that. I still think that, you know, the world is producing really great singers and great artists and people who are making great music. So I'm still a fan of that for sure. But I do like my old records as well, you know what I mean? Whether that's going back to Al Green, Bill Withers, all of that.
Absolutely.
Or whether it's, you know, even early Bowie or whatever, you know, that my sister was really into. So I had no choice but to be into. I'm just a fan of music, full stop, yeah.
Just a question that everybody's thinking about. How could you decide to retire when you're 27? Was it because you were becoming a father and that you put your private life on the priority level?
It was a lot of things, I think. I don't think it was just one thing. I got a bit sick of the travelling, if I'm honest, because a lot of the time when you do something like this, you know, you don't actually get to see where you are anyway. You know what I mean? And that's a moan and a groan that you've probably heard from 1,000 different people who've been through this studio. But what it is, it's just frustrating, I think. I mean, I'm not frustrated by it now because I've done a lot of travelling in my own time. But one classic memory I have is that I'd been to Rome, maybe even 10 times, I think, I'd been to Rome. And I'd never seen the Colosseum. I'd driven past it loads of times. Yeah. And I remember it really well. It was pouring down with rain, and I made the driver stop the car. I said, I don't care what's happening. I don't care if we're late. I'm not bothered. I'm getting out of the car. And I stood there in the rain outside the Colosseum just looking at it. And I went over, there's 4 maps outside the Colosseum made of marble, showing the Roman Empire at its height, and then all the way down to just Rome today. And I remember just kind of drinking that in and just looking at it and just thinking, wow, you know, I've got to come back here in my own time. And I think that's what most people, you know, people who have a record out or a film or what have you, they get to go to all these places, but they don't really go to them.
No.
And
just passing through.
Yeah, and but I've kind of changed that in the last 20 years. You know, I've been to a lot of the places that I wanted to go back to, even if it's just for a night or a weekend with my wife or what have you, or friends and stuff. So, but yeah, the travelling. After a while, that kind of travelling, because you're a salesman, you could be selling beans or paint or anything. It's and also because you end up sometimes talking about a record you made 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's a really bizarre. Yeah, it's a really weird scenario.
It's not your present anymore.
No,
it's just a past.
But now, thankfully, I do a lot more singing in terms of gigs and what have you. We did a small gig in Berlin a few days ago. And you know, we're going to come back and hopefully go right through Europe doing gigs and what have you. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. We did a little tour in the UK a month or so ago, and I think as long as you keep singing, see what I did there, as long as you keep singing, then I think it reminds you of why you're here and what you're doing.
Yeah,
it's just sometimes, I mean, this is fun because we're talking about music and we're playing songs that I love as well, so I'm totally fine and groovy with all of that. But I think sometimes, you know, after a few days of doing just interview after interview, you kind of think, hang on a minute, what do I do? Oh yeah, that's what I do. I sing.
I sing.
That's what I do. I don't talk about it. That's what I do. That's what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? So yeah, you just have to have a balance, don't you? I think, and yeah, I just got a bit sick of it, I think, and but yeah, I did want to be at home with our daughter for sure. You know, I think most mums and dads, you know, if they had a choice, would very happily not be at home every day with their kids because, you know, I mean, I think that's just the reality of it. But I think it's a mix, isn't it? You want to be there for the important bits and you want to be there when you can. And if you're on the other side of the world, that just isn't going to happen. You know what I mean? You're not getting home for tea time. You know what I mean? That just isn't happening. So I don't know, really. I just decided that I wanted a different life, you know, so.
And now that you've decided this, and now 25, 27 years afterwards, do you think that now, whatever will happen with this album, with the tour, with the gigs and so on, you think that now you're more prepared to enjoy it, really enjoy it?
Yeah, I am enjoying life in general a lot more, because I think as you get older, I think maybe that isn't true, but I think it's true for me. As I've got older, I probably value life a bit more. I think when you're young, obviously, it's a cliche, but it's true. You go through life just thinking everything's a breeze and whatever. Maybe that's a bit condescending, actually. I don't mean that, kids think it's a breeze, and it isn't for every one of them. But I'm just saying that you take things for granted a little bit more, because it's just coming at you all the time. And when you do reach the age of 50, you think, well, how long have I got left? And you think, well, I want to make every week count, you know what I mean? If not even every day, so...
This album counts. Il veut que tout ait un sens, que tout compte. En tout cas, cet album, il compte, parce que c'est vrai, je vous jure que c'est la vérité. Lorsque vous allez l'écouter, le découvrir, comme vous l'avez fait tout au long de ce vendredi, vous allez vous rendre compte que c'est un album qui n'est pas du tout passéiste. It's not an album from the past. That's what I'm telling to people.
Thank you.
Is that you have to listen to it as something fresh, because that's how it sounds. The first time we listened to Keep Singing, we just thought, okay, it's a fresh record.
Great.
And afterwards, we noticed that it was from Rick Astley.
Oh, right, okay.
First we noticed the voice was great, the record was great. And then, Rick Astley, he has to come along.
That's great.
So,
thank you.
Thank you very much for having been our guest.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure for us.
Nostalgie.